Hello everyone, we are from tutorial 1, group 4. Today we will be discussing about differences in culture and the closing case will be Russian culture. These are our group members. We have Irina, Sofia, Hanis, Iza, Ariba, Charani, Kadiri, Spredler, Chuyen, and me, Kehui. Without further ado, let's start with question 1. Discuss why the culture of a country might influence the cost of doing business in that country. Illustrate your answer with a country and company examples. The culture of a country can significantly influence the cost of doing business due to varying social norms, values, and business practices. These cultural factors affect everything from the pace of negotiation to management styles and employee expectations. First, time orientation varies widely across culture. In Germany, punctuality and efficiency are highly valued, as seen with Siemens. The company benefits from a disciplined work culture but faces higher costs due to the need for strict adherence to deadlines and productivity standards. On the other hand, in Brazil, time is perceived more flexibly. A company entering Brazil may face delays in negotiation or project timelines, which can increase operational costs due to extended workflows and resource management. Second, hierarchical structure influence decision making. In Japan, respect for authority and consensus building is key, as seen with Toyota. While this structured approach ensures quality, it can slow down decision-making processes, increasing administrative costs for companies adapting to this culture. And lastly, social relationships play a critical role in many countries. In China, businesses value building strong interpersonal networks known as guanxi. McDonald's adapted by introducing menu items like the spicy chicken sandwich and taro pie to suit local tastes. This requires significant investment in R&D, supply chain adjustment, and marketing, which increase initial costs but ensure market acceptance.
My name is Sofia, and I'll be presenting question number 2. Do you think that business practices in an Islamic country are likely to differ from business practices in a Christian country? So the answer is yes. Businesses practices in Islamic countries may differ from Christian countries due to their unique religious, cultural, and ethical frameworks. These distinctions are seen in the following important areas. First is ethical consideration, where in Islamic business practices, Islamic finance is governed by Sharia law, which prohibits interest, or riba, excessive uncertainty, qarar, and investments in haram, forbidden activities such as alcohol and gambling. This leads to a focus on ethical investments and profit sharing models. As for Christian business practices, while Christian teachings also emphasize ethical behavior, the application can vary widely. Many Christian countries do not have specific prohibitions against interest or certain type of investment, leading to a different financial practices. Like for example, in Islamic finance, a bank may offer profit sharing account instead of traditional savings account that earn interest, reflecting the principle of risk sharing and ethical investment. Next is the law, wherein Islamic company practices, Sharia law is incorporated into company legislation in many Islamic nations, impacting dispute resolution procedures and contracts. In contrast to secular legal system, contracts must adhere to Islamic principles, which may result in distinct contractual responsibilities. But as for Christian business practices, in generally speaking, nations with a majority of Christians follow a secular legal system that do not apply religious law to commercial operations. Although they might not be the same ethical restriction as in Islamic finance, this could result in more freedom in contract negotiations. Moving on, we have styles of communication, where in Islamic business practices, indirect and context sensitive communication, which is very common, and reading between the lines are very crucial, and nonverbal clues are very important. Islamic business practices formal greeting because many Islamic civilizations are hierarchical, so greetings frequently contain titles and statements of respect. As for Christian business conduct, on the other hand, the communication is typically more plain and direct in many nations with a majority of Christians. If this is not adjusted to local conventions when conducting business in an Islamic settings, it may result in miscommunication. And lastly, we have religion's place in business. For Islamic business practices, religion is fundamental in day to day corporate activities. So, businesses may close during prayer times, which are observed, and businesses that prioritize community welfare through corporate social responsibility (CSR) initiative may include Islamic teachings. As for Christian business conduct, although some Christian companies incorporate their faith into operations, for example, through value based leadership or prayer, this approach differs greatly between denominations and geographical areas. So, because many Western economies are circular, so religious factors might not be as important in a day to day company operations.
Hey everyone. Today I'll explore how cultural differences between two very distinct countries, Sweden and Colombia, impact how business is done. The main question I worked on was how do cultural differences influence the cost of doing business in each country, the likely future economic development of each country, and differences in business practices. In this presentation, I'll compare the cultures of Sweden and Colombia and explain how these differences shape business costs, economic development, and practices in each country. Let's start by looking at their cultures. Sweden is known for its egalitarian and individualistic culture. People value independence, equality, and work-life balance. Decision-making is democratic, and organizations typically have flat hierarchies. Efficiency and teamwork are key, while personal relationships are less emphasized in professional settings. On the other hand, Colombia is a collectivist and hierarchical society. Relationships and loyalty play a central role in both personal and professional life. Businesses follow clear hierarchies, and decisions often rely on trust and authority. Stability and structure are highly valued to reduce uncertainty. In short, Sweden prioritizes independence and efficiency, while Colombia focuses on relationships and structure. Now, let's look at the costs of doing businesses. In Sweden, high labor costs and taxes make doing business expensive, but this is balanced by excellent infrastructure and a stable political environment. For instance, Sweden's corporate tax rate is 20.6%, and its labor laws ensure strong protection for employees. In Colombia, labor costs are significantly lower, with average salaries much below those in Sweden. However, businesses face challenges like bureaucratic inefficiency and higher risk, such as security concerns. Infrastructure is improving but remains less reliable compared to Sweden. So next, let's compare economic development. Sweden has a stable, innovation-driven economy. It's consistently ranked among the world's most advanced countries and heavily invests in sustainability and technology to counter challenges like an aging population. Colombia is an emerging market with major growth potential in areas like agriculture, energy, and tourism. The economy is growing rapidly, 7.5% in 2022, but is also volatile due to political instability and dependence on commodity exports. Let's now discuss business practices. In Sweden, decision-making is collaborative and consensus-driven. Managers are approachable and professional relationships are formal and efficiency-focused. In Colombia, trust and personal connections are essential for doing businesses. Clear hierarchies are respected, and negotiations often take longer as they rely on building relationships first. The key difference is that Sweden prioritizes efficiency while Colombia emphasizes trust and loyalty. In conclusion, cultural differences between Sweden and Colombia have a major impact on how business operates. Sweden offers stability, innovation, and efficiency, but higher costs. Colombia provides cost advantages and growth potential, but with higher risk due to political and structural challenges. Understanding these cultural differences is essential for success in global markets. Thank you that you listen to me, and I'm happy when I can answer your questions.
So next is question 4. Read the country focus, Turkey is religion and politics. Then answer the following question. Question A. Can you see anything in the values and norms of Islam that is hostile to business? The answer is no. The values and norms of Islam are not inherently hostile to business. In fact, Islamic teachings provide strong support for ethical and productive business practices. Why? First, because Islam focuses on ethical business practices. Islamic principles promote fairness and discourage exploitative practices like charging interest such as riba. There is strong emphasis on merchant honor and trust in business dealings. This aligns with modern ideas of sustainability and ethical entrepreneurship. Next, Islam also encouraged entrepreneurship. The Prophet Muhammad himself was a trader and emphasized values like honesty, integrity, and hard work. Islam teaches that engaging in lawful work to provide for one's family is a form of worship. As mentioned in the article, 90% of Muslims' lives should be devoted to work in order to put food on the table. And lastly, challenges are cultural and not religious. As highlighted in the article, that the low participation of women in the workforce is the Achilles heel of the economy. So these are the challenges that they face, but this does not reflect Islam's core values. For question B, what does the experience of Kayseri teach about Islam and business? The experience of the Kayseri region demonstrates that Islam and business can coexist and thrive together. First, because Islamic values drive success. Islamic principles like honesty, hard work, and social responsibility have contributed to the rise of successful enterprise in Kayseri. The article highlights how local business leaders contribute to success to an entrepreneurial spirit that they say is part of Islam. This has earned the region of the nickname Anatolian Tiger. Next is adaptation to globalization. The business in Kayseri show how Islamic communities can adapt to global trends. Some leaders acknowledge that globalization has inspired them to embrace Western capitalist practices while maintaining their Islamic identity. As the article states, local Muslims are now making business a priority and see the Western world as model. And lastly is cultural challenges remain. One significant challenge is the limited role of women in the workforce. The article points out that this is the Achilles heel of the economy, potentially limiting the region's ability to match European Union standards. Addressing this issue could unlock even greater economic potential. So to sum up, Kayseri illustrates that Islam provides a strong ethical foundation for business success and adaptability in globalized economy. That's all from me, so I'll pass to next presenter.
Next, we will look into question C. What are the implications of Islamic values toward business for the participation of a country such as Turkey in the global economy or becoming a member of the European Union? I've listed down 5 implications and we will look at the first one. First one is strengthening ethical business practices. Islamic value emphasize on trustworthiness, fairness, and integrity. These principles can enhance Turkey's reputation as a reliable trade partner in the global economy and align very well with the European Union's focus on ethical governance and transparency. Next, we have export potential to Islamic markets. Adherence to Islamic business ethics and practices allows Turkey to position itself as a trade hub between the European Union and the Muslim majority markets, creating a mutual economic benefits. Next, adaptation to globalization. Islamic values are being adapted to fit global economic norms, showcasing Turkey's ability to modernize while maintaining cultural identity. This demonstrates a flexible approach that could facilitate integration into the European Union. Next, we have the challenges on gender equality. Islamic values regarding traditional roles may influence societal norms, resulting in lower female participation in the workforce. This dynamic could have implications for Turkey's economic growth and alignment with the European Union standards on gender equality. And last but not least, we have cultural and economic synergy. Turkey's Islamic-inspired work ethic, as seen in entrepreneurial regions like Kayseri, demonstrate that Islamic values can complement Western-style capitalism. This synergy could make Turkey a model of cultural integration for the European Union.
Question 5. Reread the management focus, China and its Guanxi, and answer the following questions.
Why do you think it is so important to cultivate Guanxi and Guanxi Wang in China? Cultivating Guanxi and Guanxi Wang, which is relationships and also relationship networks in China, is very important because it always aligns with the country's long-standing cultural, social, and businesses traditions, which are influenced by the Confucian philosophy. So we can see that Guanxi actually focuses on creating strong bonding, trust, loyalty, and also mutual obligations among the people. So this often makes it easier for people to do business and also open up new opportunities. So in China, knowing the right people can actually help us to make a difference between success and also failure in business projects. Because by using Guanxi, it can actually help us to get special opportunities like access to important resources, support from the officials, and also even overcome bureaucratic obstacles.
What does the experience of DMG tells us about the way things work in China, and what would likely happen to a business that obey all the rules and regulations rather than trying to find a way around them like Danmins? The experience of DMG illustrates that in China, business success often hinges on cultivating and leveraging Guanxi, which is a network of personal relationships and reciprocal obligations. This network can open doors, overcome regulatory barriers, and facilitate projects that would otherwise face long delays or be blocked altogether. Guanxi implies that having the right connection allows businesses to navigate around strict regulations, for example, DMG's ability to film in restricted areas such as the Beijing's Forbidden City, which is an accomplishment made possible through high-level government connections. So, for a business that strictly followed all the rules and regulations without relying on Guanxi, it would likely pose significant challenges, such as the business would face prolonged bureaucratic processes, limited flexibility in their operations, and also potentially missing out on the valuable opportunities. In a system where personal relationships can expedite approvals and also permissions, a purely rule-binding approach might place the business at a disadvantage, limiting its competitiveness and growth potential.
What ethical issues might arise when drawing on Guanxi Wang to get things done in China? What does this suggest about the limits of using Guanxi Wang for a Western business committed to high ethical standards? Drawing on Guanxi Wang can sometimes lead to corruption and also bribery. In simple words, when we use connection to get things done, it tends to involve the exchange of favors, gifts, or even money. So building relationships, we know that is actually needed and also normal. But it will becomes a problem when someone use this kind of relationships to unfairly gain some advantages where others cannot get. For example, as in the case of DMG, they are actually using high-level government connections to shut down a public area for filming or getting exemptions from the laws via high-level government. So this actually shows how Guanxi Wang can be used to gain privileges. And next, Guanxi Wang can also lead to inequality and discrimination because it always benefits those who already have strong networks and also influential friends. This means that people or businesses with good connections often get special opportunities like jobs, contracts, or even permits. So, as a result, the really talented or qualified people will be left out because they don't have such connections, especially for those from poorer backgrounds or the minority groups. So, this kind of culture will actually lead to an unfair society. This is hard for people with merit and also real hard work, but they don't have connections, so they cannot move up.
So what does this suggest about the limits of using Guangxi Wang for a Western business committed to high ethical standards? So for Western businesses that adhere strictly to anti-corruption laws will face limits because using connections to gain undue advantages or bypass regulations can conflict with their laws. So for example, legal non-compliance, engaging in practices like offering gifts or favors for regulatory exemptions may breach these Western anti-bribery and anti-corruption laws, even if culturally acceptable in China. Next is inequality and discrimination. Guanxi Wang inherently prioritizes connections over merit, and this creates ethical dilemmas for Western businesses aiming to uphold principles like equal opportunity and diversity. So, for example, having unfair competitive advantage. Relying on connections can lead to an uneven playing field where those with access to strong networks are excluded, regardless of their qualifications.
Hello everyone, my name is Elias Kadili and I'm going to present you our summary of the closing case about Russian culture. The Russian culture is called an enigma by Winston Churchill since it is described as complex and puzzling to outsiders, and this perception stems from the distinct cultural traits that differ from Western norms, leading to Westerners often having difficulties to understand the nuances of Russian societal values. In addition to that, the Russian culture has unique roots from Viking Slavic influences and Eastern Orthodox Christianity. Over centuries, the Vikings integrated with Slavic tribes, forming a unique cultural mix, and the church-state bond between the Orthodox Christianity and the state influenced Russia's history and remains even impactful today. In addition to that, the government's history of Russia favors autocracy with very limited democratic experience only between 1991 and 2000. This history emphasizes that the Russian society tolerates significant power inequalities and the social status is emphasized in the business and daily life. Therefore, Russians exhibit a greater acceptance towards hierarchies than Western counterparts. Unlike Western individualism, the Russian culture values conformity and community, meaning that collectivism is preferred over individualism. This stems from the historical agricultural communes where collective decision making was vital, and often the individual desires yield to communal interests and goals, meaning that the personal ambitions and targets and aims often went aligned with the group or collective ambitions. In general, Russians avoid uncertainty and tend to value rule following over risk taking. This is due to the fact that past political climates, like the Tsarist or the communist regime, punish non-conformity or not following the rules heavily, reinforcing caution towards what to think, what to do, and what to say in public. Today, the adherence to societal rules and bureaucracy minimize perceived risks by infrastructure. This kind of bureaucratic complexity defines the Russian governments and affects also social and business operations, meaning that the operations and the procedure structures in Russia, whether it is governmental, social, or in business environment, often have clear behavioral guidelines and mitigate uncertainty. And for foreign businesses, it is important to navigate throughout these Russian regulations to ensure success. Another point being that social norms show a pessimistic and skeptical view towards authority and change, meaning that Russians often view societal rules as restrictive and feel limited by them. And there's a common sentiment that individuals have little influence over change. This outlook or this perspective contributes to a general skepticism towards authority and governments. The Russian Stoicism is also reflected in nonverbal cues, meaning that, for example, Russians tend to smile only on numeric contents and topics, while American people tend to use smile also in as a social gesture. This could lead to misunderstandings between Westerners and Russian in the communication. The last point emphasizes on the business implications on cultural differences, since the Russian collectivism and hierarchy influences business dynamics, including decision making. The nonverbal communication norms may lead to misinterpretations with Western parties, and the hierarchical respect and compliance with regulations are essential in Russian business for foreign companies. To be successful often means to adapt to Russia's unique cultural landscape, to thrive in it.
Hi, I'm Hanis, and we will proceed with the first question, which is how do you think the lack of experience with democracy in Russia and a long history of authoritarian rule have shaped that country's culture? All right, so the first one is centralization of power and autocracy. So, in terms of historical context, since the formation of the Kievan Rus in the 9th century, Russian rulers have relied on centralized control to manage their vast and diverse territory. The Mongol invasion in the 13th century reinforced this tendency as the Mongol rule was built on strict centralization and heavy taxation. The Tsars adopt this system with the terrible solidifying the idea of single unquestionable ruler. Later, the Soviet Union exemplified extreme centralization with every aspect of life controlled by the Communist Party. Secondly, is cultural impact. So over centuries, Russia become accustomed to top-down governance where leaders make decisions without consulting the population. This history has normalized the idea that power belongs to a select elite. And the average person has little say in political affairs. It has also created a cultural preference for strong pacifist leaders who are seen as protectors during time of instability. The trade-off is that personal freedoms are often sacrificed in favor of perceived nationality, security, or unity. And for the last one is modern implication. This legacy influenced contemporary attitudes. Russia may tolerate authoritarian measures if they perceive them as necessary to maintain order, especially given the chaos of the 1990s after the Soviet collapse. This explains why modern Russian leadership, with its strongman approach, resonates with many citizens who prioritize stability over democratic ideal. So for the second point is skepticism towards authority. In terms of historical context, Russian rulers from Tsars to Soviet leaders have often maintained power through secrecy, propaganda, and also repression. For example, under Stalin, millions were imprisoned or executed in purge, creating a culture of fear and mistrust. Even after the Soviet Union's collapse, corruption and nepotism persist, with many Russians witnessing how leaders enrich themselves while ordinary citizens struggle. So, in terms of cultural impact, this long history of betrayal by those in power has fostered deep skepticism. Russia may obey laws and authority figures outwardly, but privately question their legitimacy. There is also a tendency to assume that leaders act in their own self interest rather than for the good of the people. And for the last one is modern implication. This skepticism manifests in low level of trust in government institutions and widespread cynicism about politics. So, for example, many Russians believe elections are rich or meaningless, which discourage political participation. However, this skepticism can also drive creative form of resistance such as satire, underground movement, or coded criticism of authority. So this is all from me. Let's move on to the next presenter.
Hi everyone, I'm Ariba and I'll be presenting question 2 of the case study. In this particular question, we'll try to explore how Russians on average would score on the Hofstede's 4 original cultural dimensions. These 4 dimensions are power distance, uncertainty avoidance, individualism versus collectivism, and final is the masculinity versus femininity. We'll also understand what this tells about the Russian culture. Understanding cultural nuances is essential when analyzing Russia through lens of Hofstede's cultural dimensions. The first 2 dimensions, power distance and uncertainty avoidance, highlight significant aspects of Russian culture as highlighted in the case study. Russia scores very high on power distance, meaning individuals generally accept hierarchical structures without question. This probably stems from the historical reliance on centralized authority from the era of the Tsars and the Soviet Union to the modern leadership under Vladimir Putin. Social stratification is deeply embedded and the population traditionally relies on authority figures for decision making. Similarly, Russia scores quite high on uncertainty avoidance, reflecting a cultural preference for rules, structure, and minimizing ambiguity. This is rooted in the country's history of political unpredictability and collectivist practices, where adherence to traditions and protocols provided stability. Even today, Russia's complex bureaucracy underscores the importance of structure in navigating uncertainty. Moving to the remaining 2 dimensions, individualism versus collectivism and masculinity versus femininity. These further shape Russia's cultural identity. Russia leans heavily towards collectivism as personal relationships, loyalty, and trust are prioritized over individual goals. This is a legacy of its agricultural and rural history, where community cooperation was essential for survival. Trust and long term connections remain critical in both personal and professional contexts. Regarding masculinity, Russia strikes a moderate balance. While resilience, ambition, and toughness are admired traits, there is also an emphasis on harmony and social well being, blending masculine and feminine cultural aspects together. Russians value hard work and perseverance but remain grounded in maintaining strong social relationships. After going through all of them, we do understand that these cultural characteristics have direct business implications. In high power distance societies like Russia, hierarchical structures dominate and decision making rests with senior leadership. Businesses must respect this hierarchy and tailor their communication accordingly. High uncertainty avoidance necessitates thorough preparation, clear contracts, and transparent communication, as ambiguity is often met with mistrust. The collective nature of Russian culture means that developing strong personal connections is vital before entering formal business discussions. Networking and loyalty play a significant role, and long term relationships are often prioritized over quick deals. Lastly, Russia's moderately masculine culture encourages persistence and resilience in business interactions with an emphasis on aligning mutual goals to ensure harmony and success. By respecting these cultural dimensions, businesses can build trust, foster cooperation, and navigate the complexities of the Russian market effectively.
So I will be continuing with the next question, which is question 3. Given what you think about the Russian culture, how do you think it might impact business activity within the country? Russian culture has several aspects that can significantly impact business activity within the country. So the first aspect, we will look into the value of conformity and community. Here, Russians prioritize collective goals over individual ambitions, which may result in preference for teamwork and loyalty to the group over individual performance. The impact here is building a strong sense of community within an organization can enhance employee satisfaction and performance. Collaborative projects may succeed better than the individual ones. Next is stoicism. Here, Russians are known for their stoicism, often perceiving excessive smiles or friendliness as insincere. The impact here is Westerners might misinterpret the lack of friendliness as disinterest or hostility, but this is simply a cultural norm. Building trust is important. Business relationships often progress slowly but become enduring once established. Next is the avoidance of uncertainty. Russians tend to prefer clear and structured rules and procedures, reflecting their desire to minimize uncertainty. Here, the impact is company may face resistance to change, innovate, or non-traditional approaches.
So the last question is, if a group of managers in an American company were about to visit Russia for the first time to negotiate a business deal, what advice would you give the managers about the cultural differences between America and Russia? The first advice that we will give to the managers is to be aware of stoicism and avoid over-smiling, because Russians tend to smile less frequently than Americans, which can sometimes be misinterpreted as unfriendliness. Therefore, managers should understand that Russians reserve their smiles for moments when something genuinely amusing occurs. Smiling too much without context might confuse them and also make them uncomfortable. Therefore, a calm, composed demeanor is recommended. Another advice that we will give to the managers is to understand the decision-making norms, because Russians may prefer a more top-down approach to decision-making, reflecting their historical familiarity with autocratic governance. Therefore, managers should be prepared for decisions to take time and to be made by higher-level executives. So when negotiating, it is often best to communicate directly with their key decision-makers.
The next point is convey stability and reliability. This is because Russians tend to avoid uncertain situations which are seen as threatening due to their history of political shifts and also economic instability. Therefore, when dealing with Russian partners, conveying stability and reliability actually helps to reduce hesitation and also build trust. So the American manager must always give clear and actionable plans, consistency in following through on commitments, and also a long-term commitment to the relationship. So, by minimizing the unknowns in this partnership, such dependability is more likely to reassure the Russian partners and secure the agreement to the business deal. Next, emphasize collective over individual goals. Russian culture always prioritizes the success and benefits of the community. So, this comes from their history of working and also surviving together. Therefore, in negotiations, it's better to show how a business deal can benefit everyone involved instead of just focus on one person's or one company's gains. For example, Rather than talking about individual profits, the American manager might say that this deal will help both of us succeed and also support each other's goal, which is more in line with Russian cultural values. That's all from our group. Thank you.